You can learn something listening to our Lieutenant Governor. I learned something from him just the other day, namely this: don't feed the stray politicians. It only encourages them. Next thing you know, they start breeding, and then where would you be? The other night, our governor delivered his annual State of the State address. He apologized to us again, and then promised it would be the last time he does so. Unfortunately, the state constitution provides us with no binding way to hold him to that promise. This time, things being as they are, he decided to sketch out a really modest agenda for this, his last legislative session. It was so modest, it envisioned doing so little, that the next day the governor, rather than staying at the State House to start working on that agenda with the legislature, which was in session, hopped a plane up to Washington. Asked what he was doing there, remember, supposedly his national political ambitions evaporated during a certain press conference last June. He explained that he wanted to see some friends and implied he also hoped to meet Scott Brown from Massachusetts. I remarked upon the governor's absence on my blog. That's bradworthen.com, by the way. But I ended up having to take back my implied criticism about the governor slacking off, because his press secretary put out the word that the real reason the governor was in D.C. was to meet up with some economic development prospects. I was inclined to believe him, since on this economic development trip he was apparently going nowhere near Buenos Aires. So go get him, Governor. Speaking of economic development, did you see that South Carolina beat its own personal best last week? Yep, unemployment hit a record high in December, hitting 12.7%. So as far as I'm concerned, the governor could just stay out on a permanent economic development trip. I don't care where he goes. He can go to Argentina if he wants, just as long as he sends some jobs back, preferably jobs for editors. But don't think we're the only ones suffering from unemployment. Look at poor Conan O'Brien, who just got canned by NBC. There's something of a consolation, though, in his severance package, all $32.5 million of it. When I read about that, I immediately made a note to myself: next time you're laid off, make sure it's by NBC. As far as I'm concerned, they can fire me twice if they're so inclined. Much has been said about the fact that in return for that money, Conan has to avoid saying unkind things about NBC and can't work for 8 months. Hey, for that kind of money, I'd agree never to work and to say nice things about NBC every day of the rest of my life. How hard is that? But you know, the lieutenant governor's got it right about those lazy poor people. There are jobs out there if you just had the initiative to go out after them. For instance, did you read about the proposal to build a husband to the Statue of Liberty and to have him stand at Patriots Point, looming over Charleston Harbor? Just what we need. And it's estimated it would only cost $100 million, or $150 tops. Anyway, I was thinking to offer my services as model for this monument. Don't you think that would be eminently tasteful? If you really are having trouble picturing it, just go to the link below, and you can see just what that would look like. Hey, did you hear about the bill state senators passed the other day which said South Carolina will not be bound by every law passed in Washington? You know, we tried that before. It's about 170 years ago, give or take. We called it nullification. It didn't work quite the way we wanted it to. And eventually we had to resort to our fallback plan, secession. And how did that work for us? Not so hot. Nevertheless, our leaders over there in the state senate want to have a do-over. Well, count me out. That's about all the news I can stand. Oh, one other thing. I'm going to be at the Red Cross tomorrow giving blood. Hope to see you there.